So the Acolyte seems to have the same problems that other Disney Star Wars has, such as terrible acting, terrible fight choreography, terrible costume design, terrible makeup. The sets look so cheap, it's unreal. Like, imagine you have a set from the late 90s that looks better than a show in 2024, especially with a $21 million per episode budget. It's kind of insane. To me, the fight choreography has always been bad in Disney Star Wars, especially in The Force Awakens when it seemed like a lightsaber weighed 30 pounds. And then all the way to The Rise of Skywalker, the only part that had any good choreography was the opening scene with Kylo Ren. And that was in slow motion, so it wasn't even very long. It was like a few seconds. And it's always interesting when you try to criticize anything of Disney Star Wars, no matter what it is. If you say the writing is bad, their first comeback is, "Oh, you're a racist, you're a sexist." You can complain about the choreography, the fight choreography, or honestly the bad CGI, the bad acting. Even if it's a white dude, they still like claim you're a racist or a sexist or something's wrong with you. So it's almost like they use their lack of competence, and then they use it against you and say that you're a bad person for not liking something that is terribly done. And in episode 3, when they went to the witches, or whatever you call them, that sort of dance song thing with the power of one to many bullshit, whatever they said. Like, it just sounds so dumb. And first of all, it doesn't even seem like it's in Star Wars. That's one of the main things about Disney Star Wars. It doesn't seem genuine. It doesn't seem like you're in that universe. I think that's one of their biggest problems, is that it never feels like it's actually Star Wars. It almost doesn't even seem like they're trying to make it feel like Star Wars, or look like Star Wars, or sound like it. And I think, talking about the witches, I think episode 3 slightly does affect the universe in terms of the Force babies, because at least before, it was pretty rare, if not just never happened. But now you have people in these cults that can just create Force babies, and I guess it's not a direct result of a reaction from the Force itself, but I don't know, it just seems like it doesn't really make sense, and it shouldn't have been implemented. And one of the things that the showrunners have said is that they almost want to make the Jedi look like they're not so perfect, or like that they show that they have problems. And it's like, that's what the entire prequel trilogy was for. It was showing how the Jedi are corrupt, how they're too into the government. They're not going by the will of the Force, and they're basically allowing themselves to stray away from what the Jedi should be. That was the whole point of that was one of the big points of the prequels. But now they're basically making it so the Jedi just basically kidnap children and brainwash them, basically taking kids away from their families, and then lying about possible, bad guys or Sith Lords. You can't just imply that the Jedi are all bad, because even if you look at Anakin, right? He was a slave. Him and his mom were poor, living on a really, really dangerous planet. It's like I would say a good chunk of the time, the Jedi actually get children out of bad situations. And like I said, we've already seen how corrupt and I guess immoral the Jedi are. The Jedi were always good, just because there's some corruption, even for a few decades in the timeline, doesn't mean that any other group or the Sith are the good guys just because the Jedi aren't like 100% good. And then when you look at the actual scenes itself, like in one of the fights with Trinity, how she kind of tries to do the I'm too cool to fight you kind of BS. It's like, first of all, that choreography and just the way it's shot, the way it just looks so stupid. And two, she's basically putting other people in danger by not actually subduing the person attacking her and not using her lightsaber or not basically disarming the person. And the other girl, she's mad at the Jedi for being, bad people or whatever, but then she's deliberately putting civilian lives in jeopardy just to get at this Jedi. It kind of doesn't make any sense. It's really stupid. And then Trinity, she's doing the I'm too cool to fight fucking bullshit, and then she dies like an idiot. It's just funny. Yeah, like, she has a moral strife against Jedi, and then she just puts civilian lives in danger. It's so stupid. And I remember with the Nemoidians, the Trade Federation people, they kind of sound stupid now. Like, no matter what people say about the prequels, I actually like how they sound. I like how they sound different. And honestly, I don't think there was any problem with how it was in the prequels. I think they just sound sort of lame now. Like, give them back their cool voices. If anyone complains, honestly, who cares? And I don't know how many scenes, but in some scenes in the Jedi Temple, they have to use the Force to open automatic doors, which makes no sense to me, because nowhere have we seen before where they have to use the Force just to open a door in the Jedi Temple, or really in like most places in Star Wars. It's an automatic door. You don't need the Force, or at least you shouldn't, unless you're making a terrible TV show. In one of the episodes, a guy says that you won't be able to kill a Jedi with steel, yet she killed Trinity with throwing knives in the first episode. It's like, did you not watch your own show? Did you not read your own script? The scale of time is completely off. So at one point, they say, we only have about 3 hours left of light on the planet they're on. It's like a jungle planet. They're looking for a Wookiee Jedi. They say they only have 3 hours of light left. And then it cuts to characters on Coruscant in the Jedi Temple deliberating, I believe, with Ki-Adi-Mundi, which I'll get to that in a second. They're talking about different things. And within that 3 hours, because that's how it's portrayed in the actual episode itself, they can be talking on Coruscant and then take a ship and go all the way to the planet that they're on. So within 3 hours, you can leave the Jedi Temple, get on a ship, be in hyperspace, and travel to a planet on the Outer Rim, when Coruscant is, I believe, in the Inner Rim planets, or like in the core kind of region. If you watch Star Wars before, you'll remember in Empire, after everyone leaves Hoth, Han and Leia are traveling in space for a while, and then they eventually find a planet to go to, which was Bespin. And during that time, you are seeing Luke training, which he was there for, I believe, like 3 to 6 weeks, roughly. So you can have people traveling in space for about a month, but then in this show, you basically have instantaneous hyperdrive speed. And then they're basically searching for the same person at the same time, even though they were in two completely different areas of the galaxy. Like, it shows in the writing that they don't care where people are or when people are at certain areas. And it's kind of funny because there's a video of Leslie Headland, Weinstein's former assistant, by the way. She was basically saying how, she things about with her and her sister, her estranged sister, how she wanted to basically make a story based off of that. And it's like, these people literally write their stories off of their own life, not just like what would be a good story or what would be interesting. They just basically make their own life, write their own life onto the page. And they're creating stupid terms like mechanic. Like, what? Just call them a mechanic. Like, they've used that word before in Star Wars. You don't have to create new bullshit just to sound different, because it sounds stupid. And also, talking about really awkward choreography and just bad prosthetics and everything. The scene with the Jedi that was meditating, it just looks so stupid how when she's kicking him and it's doing nothing. It just looks so stupid. And it's like, if you look at him, parts of his face and head and his hair make him look young and then make him look really old at the same time. And then later you find out that basically the same actor plays another character or another Jedi later. It's like, it's so stupid. And there's another scene, I think it was in episode 3, where one of the witches, or I guess the lead witch, says how the Jedi, or some people, claim to use the Force after and while she's literally using the Force. It's mind-boggling to me. Like, she says it's not a power that you wield, as she's literally wielding it. And it's funny how with Kathleen Kennedy there was the whole entire push that Star Wars was female and all the woke bullshit that shouldn't be anywhere close to Star Wars. And then it's funny how it's the Force that impregnates these the lesbian cult members. And it's just ironic that basically means that the Force is male, not that anyone really cares what fucking gender the Force is, because it's not a living being. It doesn't have a gender. And another reason why the show is stupid is because they're trying to show how the Jedi are so bad and that they're obviously not perfect, because no one is. And then they proceed to show you the Jedi not only trying to recruit kids that could possibly be living in poverty, but when you see how the witches sort of are, and they seem very abusive, very cult-like, very indoctrinative, and then you see that they have locks on the outside of the doors. So it's like they're literally keeping the girls in, like, let's say their bedroom for however long they want. That literally seems like prison. And there's one scene where two characters bring out black bins that I assume have like cargo or something in it, but it's like you carry the 3 bins roughly 100 plus feet away or 50 feet away from the ship, and then put things from the bins into your backpack sort of thing. So why didn't you just put those things into your backpack when you're on the ship, so you didn't have to carry multiple things at once to a place where you're just going to have to bring them back to the ship anyway? Like, it's clear that they don't think of these things. They don't write things down and then read it over and then say, oh, that's not going to make sense. Or when they're filming it, they don't say, that's not going to make sense. Like, you'd assume that when you're making something worth $20 million per episode, you'd be checking things over and over again, because you have the resources, you have the people. And one thing that kind of bothers me is, you see in like the opening theme, kind of whatever they would call it, where you can compare it to the Marvel opening theme, where it like has all the pages flipping up and down. Basically, they're just showing you, oh, these are the things that we took over and basically destroyed, like Darth Vader and all. And, you know, for some reason there's a sink in the opening theme. Yeah, for some reason there's a sink in the opening theme, which, no idea why it's there, but I'm not really surprised. Like, they try to flash you IP iconography that you're like, oh, cool, like I like that, or used to like that. And then they're just like, oh, well, we've destroyed that, we've shat on it. You know, they were complaining that they only had 3 hours of sunlight left, which is like, you could have stayed in orbit, or you could have found maybe somewhere in the middle of some trees to hide out for the night, and then, you know, go back at it in the morning and have a lot more time. And they brought in Mundi into the show, which, first of all, his prosthetics look terrible. Somehow, in 1998, or whenever they filmed The Phantom Menace, they made him look good back then. Even with close-ups, he looked good back then. And then there's also the problem of his age, where this is about 100 years before the Battle of... or it's 100 years before the prequels, basically. So in the timeline, he wasn't actually born yet, to where the Wikipedia had to change their own numbers on their website. And then there's also the problem that, you know, he was talking about how in episode 1 how the Sith have been extinct for a millennia, and now there's a guy with the red lightsaber. Kind of looks like a Sith. He looks pretty stupid, but if you had to compare him to something, you'd probably say he's a Sith. He has a red lightsaber, and he's pretty strong because he can fend off multiple Jedi at once. So you'd assume sort of like Rule of Two vibes, because, you know, the whole point of the Rule of Two is that the two have more power than 1,000 Sith would have. So now they have to explain how and why he doesn't talk about that in episode 1, where the Sith finally come back and he's like, oh, we've found beings like this before, maybe we can learn and apply that to Darth Maul. Because when you say that you haven't encountered Sith in 1,000 years, you'd assume that they probably wouldn't have many beings like this that they've gone up against. So it would be really helpful if they learned off this guy for the future, and then talked about that for Darth Maul. But no, they didn't, and then a Jedi died because of it. And also, this guy who we don't know who he is yet, he's probably Asian Ezra Miller, but it could be anyone at this point, because Disney likes to subvert all of our expectations, no matter how stupid their fucking outcomes are. So this guy can force push 8 Jedi, maybe even more at once, multiple masters. And what it also changes is the Syrian race, I think that's how you pronounce it. They usually lived about 65 or 70, which would have lined up with Mundi in the previous timeline, before Disney fucked everything up. So now Kiadi's like, what, 150 roughly? Or I guess 130 when he dies in episode 3, which that's a 2 to 3 times the lifespan than before. And fucking retards online and just in general were saying, oh, that's not Mundi, or we don't know that it is, which, first of all, they literally fucking tell you it's Mundi in the credits. Also, for how rare Syrians are, or Kyrian, or however you say it, that species is already rare enough, and then to have a male in that species is extremely rare. So the likelihood of there being 2 Jedi from the same species within 150 years is basically 0. Basically, they're even more rare than Yoda, because even in the prequels, there are 2 beings of Yoda's species, Yoda and Yaddle. So you could even say that they're more rare than that species, and we know almost nothing about that species. And then you have the trap scene in the jungle, which for the girl was a complete character change, and was super random, to where it was a completely different person. It's almost like she switched with someone else. It made no sense. And then she says that she's going to turn herself into the Jedi, and then never ends up turning herself in. And to find the Wookiee, couldn't they have used maybe certain scanners? Or, couldn't they sense, there's a fucking Jedi somewhere, and we sense someone strong in the Force nearby, and somehow a rag has the same scent from a year ago? Like, what are the odds of that? I feel like one of the only reasons people like episodes of Disney Star Wars shows is, one, because of the cameos. Like, until Luke showed up in The Mandalorian, Like, yeah, it had viewers, but it wasn't, like, massive. People didn't love it. And then imagine if Ahsoka didn't have Ahsoka and Anakin in it. It was, even with those two characters, it was already garbage. The only thing that would make sense with the Sith guy is if there was a cover-up. But then, in order for that to happen, he would have to kill every single person that has either seen him or knows that he exists, or someone like him exists. Because if anyone lives, they're probably going to tell other masters or the council, because they'd be stupid not to, because then either a war could start, or a bunch of Jedi could start dying, or civilians could be dying. And if he does end up killing everyone that has ever seen him or knows about him, I feel like the only people that powerful would be Sith Lords, right? And not just Dark Jedi. And one thing that I don't like that Disney keeps doing is making certain characters overpowered, sort of like this bad guy in this show, where he can fend off 8 Jedi at once, where not only does that make the old Sith Lords look not as strong, because they can only take on, 2 Jedi, right? Or maybe 4. Like, Sidious couldn't even beat 4 Jedi, but this guy's fending off, 8, maybe 9 or 10? Like, not only does that make the old bad guys look weaker, but then by contrast, it makes the Jedi look weaker because they were at the same skill level. And Disney's done it in The Force Awakens, where Rey didn't even have to train and she could use a lightsaber. Imagine someone in real life using a lightsaber. They'd probably cut their leg off or cut their head off, because you can't just wield a lightsaber without being trained. But she could do it. She could beat Kylo Ren. I don't care if he was injured. She could beat Kylo Ren without training. And I think to make it so people weren't confused, a lot of people assume if you have a red lightsaber, you're automatically a Sith. Which I think if you want to have a bad guy and he's not Sith, you could just give him, like, maybe a yellow lightsaber, or a black lightsaber, or maybe a white saber. Maybe you can add gold into it, like from the Expanded Universe. Like, in the Expanded Universe, with the Eternal Empire, they use yellow lightsabers, and that's sort of their Sith version of their lightsaber was yellow. Which, it looks pretty cool. But I don't think these show creators and writers are smart enough to do certain things like that. And I just really think that Disney Star Wars overall is garbage. It's absolute trash. I hated it ever since I walked out of The Force Awakens. I knew that movie was terrible. Somehow people like that movie. Somehow people like anything else that they create. It just seems like they've destroyed one of the best IPs to ever be created. And unfortunately, I don't think, unless someone else buys it, or the all the way from the top down is just swapped out with other people, I don't think it's going to ever change. So yeah, if you guys like the show, tell me why. And if you don't like the show, then I guess you can talk shit about it in the comments if you watch the video. Yeah, that's it.